On today's show, Tim Hardaway Jr. will not be back for the playoffs this year. Jason Kidd told us. What does that mean for the Mavs going forward? And Nico Harrison sat down with WFAA's Mike Leslie to talk about the Porzingis trade, which is now the Spencer Dinwiddie trade. And can the Mavs get a seat at the table in free agency? We'll learn that for sure on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can subscribe to the show. Inching our way to 12,000. It's our goal by the end of the playoffs. 12,000 subs. Help us get there. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, contributor at Mavs.com, the table setter, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
No Luka Doncic against Houston. Are you worried or not? Like, is this? I mean, Houston, they're going for one of the top picks. They want Chet, Jabari, one of these people, but still, they can't blow this game.
Has anyone told the Houston players that? Are the players tanking, Isaac? Do they care? Does Steven Silas care?
So yeah, Panic Face cares.
Yeah, no, I am not Nick Van Panic Face today about Luka Doncic not playing against the Rockets. It's tight. I mean, everything is tight right now, right? The Mavs are a game back from the Jazz. They can pass them or get within a half game if they win the game against the Rockets. They're also only 3 games back from the Warriors, who just lost to Orlando. We'll talk about that in a minute. And they're a game and a half up on the Nuggets now, who just beat the Clippers tonight. 2.5 games up on the Timberwolves. That's not even that big of a gap. There's a smaller gap between them than there is between the Mavs and the Warriors. So it's all real tight right now. So I understand people that are like frustrated and thinking, okay, well, Luka's just going to rest tonight. I think Luka needs this night. Watching him in that Timberwolves game, watching him, just the times that you don't see on TV, right? Just watching him on the bench, walk around on the court, like the times that he's just not prominently, on TV, he looked tired. Like he just looked tired. He looked over it. And I think he needed a break. And I can understand that as a person that works and has a job. Sometimes, some days you just need a break. And I think that Luka may need one. And the Mavs need him to be at his best. They need him to be at 100% and completely ready for any kind of playoff success. Like, doesn't matter who they're playing, Jazz, Warriors, maybe Nuggets, whoever it is. Like, he has to be 100% ready. And if he's not, then the Mavs have no shot anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that we're this close to the end of the season and they could realistically finish 3 through 7. Like, that's a huge variety on how far they could finish in the standings. But, when you look at the schedule, it's like, if you want to set Luka for a game, you want to rest Luka. Well, what's your options? Because you want to do it against a team that you obviously have a really good shot at beating. So it's like, how many opponents are you going to play from now between the end of the year that are trying to lose to get that draft pick? You're playing Houston this week. And then,
turns out they have the worst record in the NBA.
The Lakers suck, but they're not trying to tank. So then you look at like the Wizards next Friday. I don't think he's gonna, I don't think.
No, you can't sit him for that one.
He's not gonna sit that one. And
does that one have implications to it? I don't know. Is there a thing there?
How much is Spencer Dinwiddie gonna like playing in Washington?
Bradley Beal went on NBC and said that he really needs a bigger guard that can get into the lane and get to the rim next to him. That's the kind of guard that he needs to play next to him. That's what Bradley Beal said on NBC.
I'm glad he has Porzingis. So, but then, that next week, you have Detroit and Portland. It would not shock me, if Luka sets out one of those games, but it's just, you don't have very many opponents that are trying to lose right now. So that's what they're trying to do with Houston.
Yeah, it is what it is. And so Luka's not going to play that game. Tim Hardaway Jr. is not going to return this season. We had thought when the injury first happened that Tim was going to be out and then possibly be back just for the start of the season. The end of his, injury was going to put him right at about April 10th or 11th or so. That was like, if we took the exact timeline of when the injury happened, that's when he would come back. Jason Kidd said today, do you think he's, he said back to her, basically this is a weird quote to say on a podcast. You said, do you think he's going to play in the playoffs? I don't think he is as of right now. That's a quote from Jason Kidd quoting back to the reporter that asked him if Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to come back. So Jason Kidd doesn't think that Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to come back this year. What does that change for the Mavs?
I think it just puts a bigger emphasis on, Dinwiddie. Just that, when you lose Tim, you lose such a chunk of the offense, coming off the bench. Now that, he obviously moved to that bench role, but it's also kind of if he did come back, they would have to figure out what happens with the second unit. Like they would have to figure out how Dinwiddie and him is going to play together. How are they going to split up minutes? Who's he going to play over? Because Tim's not going to come back and play 8 minutes. He's not just going to take Josh Green's role. So who's he taking minutes from? Is he taking from Reggie Bullock? Is he taking it, some from Dinwiddie? How would Dinwiddie and him fit? All of that. I don't know. But now they at least don't have to worry about figuring out that wrinkle in it of trying to figure out what to fix. But the downside is you are losing some offense in Tim. And we were just saying the other day, it's like, hey, that Charlotte game, that's a prime Tim game of like, hey, he has like 7 threes and they end up winning that game. We're like, oh, okay, cool. Tim had 28 points in this game and we couldn't have, they desperately needed help. So I think for the Mavs, it puts a bigger emphasis on the impact that Dinwiddie has coming off the bench.
Completely. And it puts more of an onus on Brunson too. Dinwiddie and Brunson and the Mavs shooters in Bullock, in Dorian, and in Maxey in non-March games. And don't forget that Tim was really good in the playoffs at times last year. Like he had 4 20-point games against the Clippers last year. He had 2 20-point games in an 18-point game and a 19-point game and a 17-point game against the Clippers the first year, right? It's like he overall in those, can I do this on Basketball Reference? Ooh, I can. He averaged 17 points a game in those 13 games against the Clippers the last 2 years. In shooting, 37% from 3, hitting 3 threes a game, taking 8 a game, had an assist and a half or so, but his scoring mattered for the Mavericks, and they had another guy that could put up, 28 in a given game or 20 in a given game, and they needed that. And now Dinwiddie, like you said, fills that role. Hopefully Brunson steps up and fills his role a little bit better too. Dorian has taken a step forward as a shooter a little bit. Bullock is now in the fold. He wasn't the last 2 years. And so, the onus is on those guys. Dwight Powell is all of a sudden like a monster scorer now that it's March. Maybe he takes a step forward, but that's what the Mavs have to rely on now. With Tim Hardaway Jr. out, they have to rely more on these other guys to step up. And before Dinwiddie came over, and when Tim Hardaway was still out and Porzingis was out, all of a sudden it was like just Luka and Brunson. That was the only scoring. And it was just the Mavs are so exposed on who could get a bucket for them at any time. And now at least you have Dinwiddie, and that changes things for you.
There would be something that is intriguing just to think about of if he was healthy, what Dinwiddie and him off the bench as a scoring punch.
That's nice.
That, Luka and Brunson's on the bench. You're not that worried. It'd be the first time probably in Luka's career that you're like, oh, okay, well, our offense it shouldn't struggle that much if we're having, Dinwiddie and Tim out there at the same time with the other guys. But it looks like it's not going to happen. And I think the bigger question is, what's Tim's future in Dallas? Have we seen, the last game in Dallas for Tim Hardaway? Because we seen his name connected to all the rumors and reports and stuff around the trade deadline. They obviously held on to him.
They shopped him. Jake Fisher said that they did shop him.
Definitely shopped him at the deadline. And now you go into next season. I mean, right now, before a Brunson deal has even, happened, that are $150 million on their payroll for next season, according to Hoops Hype. So, obviously factor in the Brunson stuff. Something's getting moved around. We know Mark's willing to pay the tax for next year, but there's going to definitely,
at least he said he is.
There's definitely going to be some trades or maneuvers or something, going into next season.
Yeah, and you said before you hit record, did Tim play his last game for the Mavs? That's very possible. That's very possible that he has played his last game for the Mavs so far, and that's interesting to think about his career. And when he signed that extension, we were excited about it, and then this year he was a little down, and then at times we're like, oh dang, we're missing Tim Hardaway Jr. But his career has been really interesting, and
he's the highest paid player on the team. Right.
Yeah, as of right now, he is the highest paid player on the team. But But yeah, the Mavs will be without him. So that's the news of the day. The Warriors also lost to the Orlando Magic, and that is notable for the Mavs because of all the things we mentioned earlier about how the Mavs are pretty close to them. Are you still in the same boat where you would rather take Utah in a first round than you would take the Warriors?
That's tough. But it's only because Steph and his health, and that's my only thing. If you're telling me we're getting Steph at 40%, I might lean Golden State just because. Yeah, I think I'd still take Utah though.
That Warriors team is a little bit of a mess right now, and the Jazz know who they are, and that would be a battle between them. The Warriors, it could be like that could be a 5-game series in favor of the Mavs because the Warriors just have all this stuff going on right now and don't know and can't get back on track. Like this would be a back on track series for them in the first round. And I'm not sure the Mavs are a team that you want to try to get back on track with the defense that they play and all that. So
let me see in like a week and a half the Warriors, because I'm also not ruling out them going on a run without Steph. They piece it all together because they have Draymond and Clay, and they kind of turn it around. And then you're like, all right, they kind of got their groove back, and now they're going to add Steph back. I don't want to see that. Or they could legit crumble, and then a week and a half from now, I'm saying that's the exact team I want because they're losing. They look in shambles, and so yeah, I could switch this soon.
They're 4-6 in their last 10. They look in shambles right now, and so coming up, we're going to get into a conversation with Nico Harrison. Mike Leslie of WFAA sat down with him. We got the recording of it, and we're going to play you a couple of clips that we found interesting about the Porzingis trade and about free agency. Can the Mavs get a seat at the table with some of these big free agents? We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about a place where you can get a seat at the table for your daily fantasy needs. It's Prize Picks. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. That's how Prize Picks works. Go check it out. If you haven't yet, if you heard me say this a whole bunch of times, go to Prize Picks, sign up for an account. It's super easy. I'm going to log into mine right now, and then I'm going to check out all the things available for me on Prize Picks. They have all kinds of stuff. They have esports. They have Memphis versus the Brooklyn Nets. They have a bunch of different opportunities for you to go ahead and put down some. Here we go. Kevin Durant, 27.5 points over under. Kyrie Irving, 25.5 points over under. Ooh, maybe you go the over on KD, the under on Kyrie Irving. You can pick that, put it in Prize Picks, and you can win some money. Go ahead and check it out. Prize Picks is an exclusive offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. Use the promo code NBA. That's promo code NBA. It's prizepicks.com. Use the app today. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. That's Locked On Now. All right, Isaac, let's get into this conversation between Mike Leslie from WFAA and Nico Harrison. He was asked about the Kristaps Porzingis trade, which is now dubbed. Can we just start calling it the Spencer Dinwiddie trade? Is that now?
No.
You're not there yet?
I mean, obviously, I like Dinwiddie fit in Dallas more than Porzingis, but I think just because Porzingis was the bigger player in the deal,
he's just taller
height wise. Yeah, it's just the Porzingis trade. But
so here's what
Dinwiddie's going to win him a playoff game, or like, hey, it's over. It's the Dinwiddie.
He already hit a game winner against the Nets, so
it's true.
This is what Nico Harrison had to say about that trade and why the Mavs made it.
On a more micro level, with what's gone on in the last few weeks, when did you know it was time to move on from Kristaps Porzingis?
Good question. The trade at the end of the day was really about the Mavericks and what makes them, how can we make us better? And it was less about Kristaps. Like, a lot of people say, oh, well, he's injured a lot, and he was, but he's still a talented player. I think the other day he played for the first time, he had like 25 points. Like, he's a good player. He's going to have good games. He would have had good games here. He's going to have good games wherever. I think we had an opportunity really in Davis and Spencer to make our roster better. And that was really ultimately the decision.
With a guy making that much money, to then take that contract, not only turn one player into two, but to turn one contract into two, how instrumental in the deal was that for being nimble as a franchise going forward?
Yeah, that. I mean, that's the reason you do it. One player into two, one contract into two, and now you have all the flexibility in the world, which is what you want.
That's what you want. There's a couple things in there that I found interesting. Is that he said we had an opportunity to get our roster better. Do you think he thinks that Spencer Dinwiddie makes them a better team like you did? Remember that when the trade went down, when Porzingis got traded, you said, I think the Mavericks are actually better today than they were before. I wasn't so sold on that. But do you think that that's what he was going for? Or was it about the flexibility he mentioned at the end of that?
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny. I didn't want to like call out him kind of contradicting himself, but it's, by him saying the second one, he's like, yeah, that's why we did it, for the two contracts. But he also talked about how it made the roster better. And
stuff can be two things.
It can be two things. I think it was more about making the roster better, even though I do think both
right
are
now.
True. Yes, right now. I said it then. I think now. I think their ceiling is higher now that they have that third spot. They moved the Porzingis spot into a ball handler, creator, and what Dinwiddie is bringing them. So.
See, for me, I think it was more about the flexibility thing. I think when he said make the roster better, I think he's looking forward. I think he's forward thinking because I think he didn't contradict himself. He says it's about making your roster better, and for him, it's make the roster better down the lane. The Kristaps Porzingis contract and as a player was it was holding the Mavericks back in so many different ways, right? There's only we said this a bunch now, but there's only so many players that can play next to Porzingis. We would talk about these players like, a Gafford or Steven Adams, or, some of these guys would become, Jonas Valanciunas would become available. And we would say, can that guy play next to Porzingis? And that became a question. Now, it's no question, right? Now the Mavs are open to playing any style that they want, right? They can try any kind of different thing or any kind of center, and they can play different ways. And that was holding them back. And so now I think what Nico Harrison thinks, it's about the flexibility. It's about the flexibility of the roster and the contracts. You split that contract into two, and all of a sudden they can do a couple different things with it. And that's what I think he was alluding to, which I find interesting. And it's interesting just to hear that from Nico Harrison, that confirmation of all the things that we've been thinking about.
Yeah, 100%.
The other thing that he talked about with Mike Leslie was about free agency and about adding players to the roster, because it's not just about this Mavs team is not ready to win a title right now. I don't know if you remember back in the preseason, or
I don't know. They probably could have a seat at the table with some of the top teams in the league.
This is gonna be our new thing. Get ready for it. But if you remember when he first got introduced, the question I asked him was, do you think this roster is ready to win an NBA championship right now? Or what does this roster need to win an NBA championship? And he said, with this coaching, I think that we can come in and make change right now. And so he kind of says that, and they did make change right now. They were right. I was very skeptical of him saying that, but it seemed to be right. Now in this, see if you can hear something that if he alludes to anything like that. And then also, let's play a game. Let's play a game. How many times? Take a drink every time you hear either Nico or Mike Leslie. Shout out to both. Anytime you hear them say seat at the table.
What's the next step in that process? Obviously, this trade was one step in the evolution of this roster. What comes next in your mind?
I think we just continue to get the roster. How do we get the roster better? How do we get players that fit around Luka? And I don't think there's a magic bullet. I don't think there's one player that does it. I just think you continue to work it until you get that right combination. And by the way, to win a championship, you got to have some luck too. You can have the best team on paper. You got to have some luck. If you go through the history of any sport, the winners, they had some luck along the way.
We talked about your relationships with players around the league, big name players around the league. I know you can't go into any specifics. I'm not trying to get you in trouble here with tampering or anything along those lines, but how instrumental can that be in that process come July?
Listen, I think Dallas is going to get a seat at the table for free agents if they want. I'm not sure if Dallas had previously had a seat at the table, but I think, and it's not just about me either. If you look at Jason Kidd, if you look at Mark Cuban, between the collective group, we'll get a seat at the table for sure.
Why do you think that was an issue? Just your perspective, your opinion. Why do you think having a seat at the table in the free agency landscape was such a problem for this organization for the last decade, if not longer?
Honestly, I don't have the history. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you. I don't know that they didn't have a seat at the table, but I just know that this group will have a seat at the table.
what can you, I don't know if change is the right word, what can you do to ensure that that seat at the table leads to walking away from the table with somebody?
Well, I mean, there's so many factors that go into free agency. It's tough to say, well, one, you got to have a seat at the table to have a chance. And so I think if you have a seat at the table, then now you need a little luck on your side. But I think you have a seat at the table, you have a good enough team that can win, a team that has the culture that people want to be a part of, which is that's the work you're doing now. That's not the work you do when you're at the table. Then I think all that helps, and then you get to sit at the table, and then you just lay your cards out, take your chances.
Oh, okay.
I need to be at the Lord's table after that.
Come to the altar.
Just take communion. I spit water out everywhere.
Is it important for the Mavs to have a seat at the table? Like, is that our takeaway from what he just said? Because honestly, how many times did we just drink? Like, he said that 7 or 8 times.
I'm glad I was drinking water.
Same.
I mean, I don't even know where to start because he said it so many times. They're confident about that seat. Like, they think they're going to.
At the table? At the table.
At the table. They're going to have a seat. It is. But yeah, coming up after the break, I do think there is something to him showing the confidence in that there's one thing for media and for fans to say, hey, that relationship with players, it's going to lead to them having that seat at the table. But for the GM to come out and stop it, for the GM to actually say of like, no, I'm confident we're going to have that seat. And I don't know Nico, personally and all that, if like he's the type of guy that's going to like guarantee things or promises things all the time. But let's just say he's not that type of guy to where he's not going to say those things lightly. And he like is saying that with confidence that it's like, oh, okay, you are really confident. Either you're talking to the right people, you know the right things. And it's like, no, we're gonna get that seat. So it's cool.
Yeah. Coming up, how does that confidence matter? We'll talk about that. And then also, we want to get into the Luka Doncic interview on JJ Redick's podcast. He said a couple of interesting things that we think matter for this season, and also just some fun stuff from Luka. And then we'll get into that. We'll get into that at the table coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. You talk about around the table. Around the table, people are talking about, wow, I want to make this change in my diet. I want to do this. I want to eat better. Built Bar is the thing for you. Snacking.
I just had one a little bit ago.
What flavor did you have?
Brownie, coconut brownie.
Oh, the goat. Coconut brownie chunks, the best Built Bar. But if you want to change your snacking, start with Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar, tastes like a candy bar. I just opened the website and oh my God, brownie batter puffs. I'm adding them to my cart. I'm clicking. Can you hear my clicking? I'm adding it to my cart right now. It's a delicious protein bar. They're great for you. Go check them out. Worth the price of admission. Hosts all over this network. We peddle Built Bars every day, and we buy them with our own money. That's how it works around here. You will not be disappointed when you get a Built Bar. Go check them out. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your entire order at built.com. All right, Isaac. I wanted to talk briefly more about the Nico Harrison interview because we joke about the seat at the table and all that. Even Mike Leslie throwing a couple seats at the table and his questions there just threw me for a loop. But his thing is, we're gonna be there, right? We're gonna be there. We're gonna be at the table, and I think that confidence, like you said, matters for this franchise and matters for Luka, and it matters for him staying in Dallas. It matters for his goals, which on this JJ Redick podcast, he said that my goal is to win an NBA championship. That's all that's left for me. Like, he was asked about awards and things like that. He's been asked about awards before. Every year when you and I talk about awards for Luka and say, well, we're splitting hairs. Is he going to make first team all NBA? Why didn't he get most improved? And we get upset about that. And we always have people on our mentions say, well, he doesn't care about that. You're right. 100% he doesn't care about that. But you know what he does care about? It's a championship. So how do they move forward in doing that? You got to get to the place where you're talking to these guys first, talking to guys that matter and talking to guys that will change the franchise, will make the franchise better, which is what I think he was talking about with the KP trade. We wanted to make the franchise better. And so how do you do that? You become more multiple with your contracts. Then You get a seat at the table again. Here, where's the?
I can't drink again.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
They'll get a seat at the table, and
The
then
wine.
The wine.
and then you can bring them in by signing and trading for a couple of these contracts, right? I think that's what the Mavs are going to have to do because they're not going to have cap space. So that's what's going to have to happen for the Mavs. I find that interesting. Something to look forward to for the offseason because I think something's going to happen. I think something is going to happen because this is a table setting move because
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
All right, Luka Doncic was on JJ Redick's podcast, The Old Man and the Three. Great podcast with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter. He had a couple of things to say, and there's a couple of things I think matter for the Mavs. The first one about yelling at the refs. This became a viral story where he said that Dirk taught him to sing a little song when you want to yell at the refs instead to try and just kind of calm yourself down. But the thing I thought mattered the most was Luka said this, quote, "I had a little talk with myself. It was unacceptable the way I was acting. This can't keep going on. It's really a bad look. It's over now." Yeah. That's maturity, right? That's what maturity is. Whenever you have something in your life, like an action that you do, biting your nails, something's, maybe it's dumb, but maybe it's actually something that matters, talking to my wife a certain way, or maybe it's, not asking questions to people or caring about what people say when they ask how my day is, or, something like that. You're like, hey, I got to stop acting childish like this. And I need to move forward and I need to just make a change in my life. And sometimes it doesn't work cold turkey. We saw Luka in the Minnesota game get real fired up at times and get close to another tech, but he has changed and this has gotten better. And I think that's made the Mavs better for it.
Yeah, he was so definitive of, hey, this is done. Like it's over. Yep. And I thought that was something. It wasn't just I'm trying to work on that. I can get a little out of hand sometimes. I know it's not embarrassing, whatever. No, it was I'm done with this. I learned from it and I'm like, all right, dang. Now, I mean, his actions just have to prove it at this point, right?
For sure. And I think they have, at least from the games since this interview, right? Because we know since that interview, there have been games where he's just been way more calm and collected. And he wasn't laughing.
But is he wasn't doing that? Is he doing it because of the tech limit, or is he like, that's what I want to know.
Sure.
Like,
I mean, consequences are a great motivator to stop you from doing something that you don't want to do anymore, right?
Yes. But is it because what he said on the pod of like, he realized his behavior and like all of that? So I almost want to see what this looks like November 2022, beginning of the season. Is it, is it going to be a full change, or is it, hey, I change whenever I hit like the 13 tech mark, like that's why either way he recognizes it. And it seems like he's putting some things in place to, like songs, like the Lockdown Mavs intro. He's probably listened to that before he gets a tech.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Lockdown Mavericks podcast.
He's probably listened to that song. Just straight away listen to that
he's
song.
He's walking out and I am Luka Doncic.
Have we seen Luka do this before to try to avoid techs? Yes, we have. We have seen him do this at the end of a season, but maybe it's something that he saw. It really was getting worse than it has been before this season, and so maybe that's something he looked at and said, hey, I just got to make a change. The other thing what I thought mattered for the Mavs was the way he talked about Dirk and the way he brought up Dirk. Usually Dirk is brought up to him, especially that last year, his rookie year when it was Dirk's last year. And I think even that second year when, Dirk was not around the team anymore, everybody asked him about Dirk. But Luka actually brought him up this time, and I thought it was a meaningful way.
Yeah, when he, JJ, it was either JJ or Tommy had asked him, hey, what's your kind of first impressions of Dallas? What were they when, playing for the Mavs? Obviously Redick played for the Mavs, and he starts, he talks about the city a little bit and just the organization a tad, but he brings up Dirk on his own. And I was, listening to it in the car. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. This relationship, because like you said, it's completely different whenever somebody asks Luka, man, what's it like having Dirk, in the franchise and all this stuff? And what is he going to say? Like, he's going to brag on it. He's going to be like, oh, it's just a blessing having whatever.
Yeah, of course. Of course. He's a great player. And
he's a legend, one of the best scorers ever. But when he's asked about the city and the franchise and he brings up Dirk on his own, it's just so cool having him I'm like, oh, okay, this really does mean something to you. You're not just giving us the fluff answer when somebody asks you about him. It really does mean something to him about the relationship. And I thought that was a notable thing.
Yeah, think about all the different personalities and people he could have brought up in that, right? And he mentions Dirk specifically.
Yeah.
And I think that matters. It's not a slight on anybody else, I don't think, but it is specifically a positive in Dirk's favor. The other thing he said when asked about Dallas and his first impressions, he said, the city of Dallas, I always say this, you have everything, but it's not too much. And honestly, I love that about Dallas, because that's one thing I love about Dallas. You have everything available to you, right? If you want to go to an amusement park, you got Six Flags. You want to go to a sporting event. Do they have any sporting events in Dallas? Like, it's every weekend, it feels like there's something.
Go to IKEA. Go to IKEA.
They got 2 IKEAs in Dallas, right? Like, they have multiple.
I used to have to go to Cincinnati to go to IKEA when I was growing up.
when I was your age.
Who wants to go to Cincinnati?
You got all kinds of restaurants. You got all kinds of different neighborhoods, and there's all kinds of things in Dallas. You got another city, Fort Worth, right? Like, you want to go to another city?
Fort Worth is different than Dallas.
It is.
Let's clear that up, everyone.
You want to go to a different city? Go
different.
Go there. Go to Fort Worth. You can do that in one day. But yeah, I love how he said that. And then the last thing he said that I found interesting was his favorite shot, like game winner, buzzer beater type shot, was the 0.8 seconds shot in Portland, his rookie year, to go into OT. That was an incredible shot. That one I will never forget.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. I love how he referenced the Houston run, the step backs, him talking about
that was moves. According to him, the first time he did a step back.
That's just wild. Him just talking, we don't get to see Luka really, and it's not like he went on some big huge monologues in this podcast, but he did give a little bit more than what we've been used to. And just the small things that we've seen clips of that listed in the pod of what he's looking for whenever he's breaking down guys and these pick and rolls and watching the big and comparing, Europe to, the NBA and, that quote, people have ran with that quote so much of, I think it's easier to score in the NBA. And, Redick asking that, well, how is that? And him just saying, well, like there's no defensive 3 in the key. In Europe. So, a guy like Rudy Gobert can just set in the paint and guard the rim. So I thought there was so much stuff. He was a blast, I think, on there. It was a lot of fun. And it was cool. And JJ, man, you can't give him enough praise. What he's doing, a lot of his guests.
He's taking our jobs.
he's so good at what he does.
He's great. Great interview. Go check it out. It's on YouTube, podcasts everywhere. All that. And then you can go also to WFAA and watch the rest of the, or you can go check out the Nico interview on WFAA. Go check out Mike Leslie on Twitter. All kinds of stuff. Guys, thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow with a Luka-less post-game show, talking about the hopeful win against the Rockets. We'll see Dinwiddie and Brunson, and maybe Dwight leads them in scoring again. That'd be great. You can also check out Locked On NBA. Go listen to that. It's with Tony East and John Corrales talking about the Eastern Conference, probably talking a little Nuggets, talking a lot of stuff. The Warriors lost probably, all kinds of stuff on Locked On NBA. Go check it out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts Monday through Friday. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.